Back in action, Dieter and Jake talking Niners, talking NFL draft, but most importantly, talking new kickoff rules. Jake, how you doing, buddy?
That's right. I'm great. I'm great. We luckily we were ahead of the curve on all this, and we just talked new NFL rule changes for a week, and
Yeah,
look, here we are.
it happened. It happened. They did the new kickoff rule. They didn't bring it all the way out to the 35 on a touchback,
Yeah,
so perhaps this is a win for sanity, but now most drives are going to be 70 yards. Touchdown
right.
drives are going to be 70 yards. Just get used to it. Used to be that they'd have to go 80 yards, then it was 75. Now it's 70. Defense loses again. It'll be fine. I think the touchback stuff is really stupid. What was your takeaway of the owners almost unanimously voting for this?
Yeah, I think I like it more than you do. I think it's something one of our commenters pointed out on the last video
Yeah.
that they don't want people getting up and going to the bathroom. They want people glued to their TV for, locked into those sweet, sweet ads and wondering what's going to happen on the kickoff and all that. So I think that is a fair point. And I think when you do look at anything the NFL decides, it's does it make more money? And if
Yeah.
the answer is yes, they'll probably vote for it, as was the case with the hip drop rule. Which again, let's be
How's
clear,
how's that going to make them more money?
this is because they're just going to find players. Because here's the thing, the way Tom Pelissero of NFL Network reported it
Yeah.
is that they are going to look to throw fewer flags and more
Yeah.
penalized players,
So my
which
theory was right. They're just looking to make 50K extra every week.
correct, which
Real
is
cool.
basically like how much do players like if you're on a bad team,
Mhm.
what's going to happen, especially like midway through the year after some fines go out,
Yeah.
some guy's going to go, I could make a goal line tackle here, or I could get fined $25,000. And listen, I'm
Not
playing
worth it.
for the Arizona Cardinals and we
Yeah.
are 4-9.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Yeah. Well, that's the product I wanna watch. I wanna watch a bunch of guys who don't give a damn, aren't trying hard. That sounds
Also,
great.
let's be clear. Uh, maybe I'm wrong on this, but the hip drop term, was that even in our lexicon more than a year ago?
Yeah, there were a couple of guys who've gotten knee injuries because linebackers or, safeties, because cornerbacks don't tackle. Um, I did take some solace in the somewhat narrow definition of the hip drop tackle, which is that you have to
Right.
fall on the
And like
back of
sort
their
of spin.
legs. Yeah, there's a whole it's like a suplex or something.
Right.
They basically described it as a wrestling move.
Right.
Um, and so I think that there is I have a little bit of skepticism towards the immediate eye rolling from every defender because it was such a narrow band, which is another reason why they're probably not going to throw flags in a game because it's like
Right.
it has to meet a lot of criteria. So you're probably going to need instant replay to figure out if it did or it didn't, which is leads it to just
Right.
be fine city. So I'm okay with that. I just don't want to see 15-yard flags for someone trying to tackle somebody.
My
And oh, he acts,
right.
here's AJ Brown at 230 pounds running really hard, but you get sort of dragged along for a second and then
Right.
you bring him down. Now somehow that's a hip drop tackle. Like I don't want to
Right.
see a flag for that. And then you look at it again and you go, oh, I don't know. I don't know if it was, Jim, I don't know. I don't know, Jim. And
God, that's
just
a good Romo.
thank you. And it's just it's just a Sesame Street character that you slightly switch over. Um, waka waka, and so that's a Muppet. Apologies.
It's
Uh,
pretty good. It's pretty
it's,
good.
it's basically great.
Uh,
So
I
I just don't want
yeah,
to. I just don't want to see referees having in real time to determine if it was or it wasn't, and if it
agreed.
just turns into fine city, I guess.
My
My money.
my friend sent me a meme. I don't know if you've seen The Boys, but there's this like clip of have you
I've
seen
seen
it?
the boys. Yeah.
So,
I
it's
kind of
there's this
stopped
clip of
after like a season and a half, but
yeah,
I'm
it's a
familiar with
little
the
much.
premise.
Right. But there's a clip of Homelander like in a theater just sort of like
Oh
watching
yeah,
a screen, sort of disassociating.
yeah,
And the caption is like when Patrick Mahomes is on a 4th and 25 and gets called for a hip drop
yeah.
and then wins the Super Bowl on a hip drop
That's
because
right.
that will happen
Yeah, I mean
and it
it's
will break everyone.
It's brutal.
And let me be clear,
Yeah,
like, it's not that I think, like, "Oh, the hip drop,"
I
like.
love hip drop tackles. No one's out here
Right,
like waving the
right.
banner.
I'm not pro hip drop. I'm just very skeptical of the NFL enforcing any rule properly and it not affecting defense in a way that makes it way harder for them to do their jobs when it's already really hard. They have to, like,
For
tackle
the
a
defense.
quarterback in a
Yeah.
specific way. I mean, the NFL did add this very slim element of correcting, um, what's it called? Roughing the passer calls,
Okay.
which I highly doubt they'll employ. It's basically if
They can
there's, like, a
correct it on the field.
the sky judge can basically say,
Sky
if they
Judge.
called roughing the passer and they said it was, like, helmet to helmet contact and it
Yeah.
wasn't, that's basically the only thing they can correct. But, like, guys jumping on them and landing full weight or, that is
Yeah.
probably not gonna be corrected.
So Sky Judge is going to be the buzzword of the
Sky
year.
God, Sky
The Sky
Lord,
God, the eye in the sky, it doesn't lie. Sky
Sky
Judge.
Shogun.
Uh, yeah, my issue is that the referees suck at calling the rules that are already on the books. Let's not make it any more complicated for them.
Right,
You want to make
right.
these guys full time because it seems like they actually have to be lawyers to figure out how to call this game. Yeah, they're just popping in on a Saturday. Gonna have
Yeah.
a kickabout on Sunday. Like,
I mean, remember when we had replacement refs? I kinda miss that.
I don't. They were just doing it in MLS, and I caught some of that, and it's not great. It's not great. There is a
It
very clear difference between big. Oh, like I was just at spring
Yeah,
training. Some of the calls, I mean, egregious, just laughable. Everybody is amateur there, right? And it's just like these people have never seen an air. Apparently, the strike zones are just gargantuan or just preposterously tiny. Like the difference between someone at the major league level, at the NFL level, at the NBA level, and the next best guy is
right.
massive. It's
It
massive.
it's so funny because 'cause we're like, "You're not good at your job." They're like, "Sure, but look at this guy. Look at
Yeah,
how bad he is."
that's right.
It's not I'm that good, it's he's very bad.
That's the American dream right there, Jake. That
Right.
is how this country runs.
It's not
So
how good are you, it's how
how bad is
bad
the
is the
next guy?
next
You
person
don't have to
behind you.
be the fastest antelope. You just have to be faster than that one.
Right.
That's all that matters.
Wow.
Can we talk about some guys who run fast?
Yeah.
We've dove into the wide receivers a little bit. Now, I don't want to say that it's topical. I don't want to pretend as if the 49ers are going to trade Brandon Ayuk or trade Debo Samuel. But
Mhm.
I do think it is important, given that Brandon Ayuk's going to get that big fat contract, I would say, in July. Um,
Yep.
and they're going to have two $20 million receivers. It's probably important to take a look
At least
and
for a year. At least for a
at
year.
least for a year.
I
Take a
think
look and
Debo's gone
see
next year.
who could come in because you're not going to sign anybody. You're not getting anybody in
Right.
free agents. You're not trading for somebody. You're going to need to draft a replacement for, let's be honest, Debo Samuel. And he probably isn't going to look anything like
Right.
Debo Samuel. So you threw
Yeah,
me two names. You got
who
two
do we wanna
names.
start with?
Let's start with the best player. And that would be, in my opinion, Javon Baker from
Let's do
UCF.
it.
Um, I hadn't watched a lot of Javon Baker because the shtick that I had heard on Javon Baker was that he was kind of just a slot receiver.
Right.
He's a little shifty dude. Well, the 49ers don't really employ slot receivers. They bring in Jawan Jennings to play tight end effectively. And I'm like, well, who cares? Who cares about Javon Baker? And then you're like, Dieter, go watch Javon Baker. And I didn't have the heart to tell you I didn't want to do that. And so I'm watching him. And I mean this. You get a good read when you're watching guys. Depends on what you're watching, but I would say there's sort of the 2 and the 5 minute mark. There's the immediate impressions, and then you work through those immediate impressions. And in about 5
Right.
minutes, you got a baseline. Then you watch another 20, 30 minutes, right? And you just see if you're right or wrong. But just the feelings, the emotions that watching Javon Baker's highlights gave me was incredible. I'm not sure that this guy is not the best receiver in the draft. Legitimately.
Wow.
I'm not sure that when it's all said and done, when we're talking about this draft class, which by the way is
Loaded.
preposterously loaded at wide receiver. I mean, just like stunningly good. Every person that I watch who has a day 1 or a day 2 grade I'm like, well, this is a top 10 wide receiver.
Right.
I haven't seen anyone yet where I'm the only guy that I'm like, well, he's not top 10 worthy is Ladd McConkey. And I think he's
Right.
really good, but he just has kind of a narrow band as a premier route runner, somebody who does separate, but isn't going to get you anything over the top. Baker, the knock on him, we got to be clear about this. He doesn't really run routes. He just sort of goes and gets open. It's
Right.
He's not a technician.
He also doesn't seem to me to be like super physical. Like I have trouble.
There is no physics. He's not out there blocking.
Right.
No,
like Kyle's not. I have trouble. I have seen Kyle fall in love with him in terms of physicality.
He would need to be an X receiver, and in that you already have one. So I got to be clear about this. I don't think Javon Baker's coming to the San Francisco 49ers. Right. But his tape was so interesting to watch because my 2-minute mark, I go, I'm thinking it. I don't really want to even tell myself that I'm thinking it. And then at the 5-minute mark, I go, nah, this dude's Justin Jefferson. And now this is the part of the podcast where everyone rolls their eyes and goes, right. What the hell are you talking about? And there's a clip here where it was just an RPO and he just runs to the house because no one was guarding him. And I said, yeah, that's pretty ridiculous. Like we're not, maybe he was just a scheme fit or a system fit and he, Big 12 and no one's playing defense, this and that. This guy's ability to catch everything, just everything, is stunning. I don't know if he had a ball put anywhere near his chest or face mask all season. He catches everything. This dude, the radius is 11 out of 10. His hands are an 11 out of 10. He has quick hands, attacks the ball. He has incredible body control. I mean, there would be back shoulder throws when he was breaking inside that he would be able to fall backwards. He would just let his body fall backwards, total trust fall to the ground so that he could catch the ball. He is insane. And this is where the Justin Jefferson comes in. Now, Justin Jefferson is indeed a better route runner. And Justin Jefferson will, at least go through the motions when it comes to blocking. But Justin Jefferson catches everything. The ball is within 10 yards of Justin Jefferson, it's getting caught. And that's what Javon Baker brings to you. Right. And there, Javon, he's 6'1", 202. That's a pretty big receiver in the modern NFL, which I was kind of stunned to see. I think this guy, when we're looking at receivers, if he gets into the right place, that puts him in a position to succeed early, even not early, just puts him in a position to succeed in their offense, the way that Minnesota did with Jefferson, because they just totally believed in him from the jump. I think when we're talking about receivers, they're just,
by the way, they're just launching balls up to him. They're like,
there's no offense.
He's down there somewhere.
There's no offense. And he just catches all of them. All of them. He's unbelievable. He's unbelievable how good he is as a wide receiver.
And he's fluid. So I said this to you earlier when I was describing the Jefferson comp and why I thought they were similar. He's a sassy. He's sassy off the line.
Yeah.
Where he's just sort of fluid and like, I don't know. It's the same thing with Jefferson where like off the line, like he just does sort of like a wiggle and then he's past you. Yeah. And then he just stops on a dime and you're like, God damn, this like skinny, tall guy. And every time.
Sassy. And then he's always saying shit when he gets up. Just every time he catches it or doesn't catch it, you just see him talking shit.
As he should.
Again, Justin Jefferson is like an obscene comp, but like don't forget that Justin Jefferson was not exactly the highest graded prospect.
He was weirdly undervalued in that draft. Yeah. Like I think part of that was that he was pinned down to be a slot receiver at LSU, and so people are like, well, he's not going to be able to work outside. Right.
Kind of like Javon Baker.
Which is like a reminder to be like, look at the guy's skill set, not where they played or exactly what offense they run. It's like, do these skills project to the offense that you want to run in the NFL with the talent around you? And if they do, you take the guy.
And listen, we got to be clear about Baker. There is a bust potential here that is massive because he's just out there being sassy. He's just out there letting his athleticism do work against Big 12 defenses. Like, this is why it's really, really hard to evaluate college football You don't know what's real and what isn't. It's you can think you know, but you don't really know. And I'm telling you, he could be out there just getting his ass kicked in
Right.
5-yard press every time. There's no way of knowing if he can separate or not from that, unless you wanted to get like crazy deep on the tape. But I don't even know if that would exist. Like, I think
Right.
you need practice film
No,
to
I'm
find out.
I'm with you. I think it's someone who, yeah, it's not even that he wouldn't work in the 49ers offense. It's that
He'd work on
like
the outside.
right.
But if
And
you
I
kind of like
just
him in the slot, then maybe that's what the Z is, where it's a
right.
lot of X concepts that you're kind of just
But
bringing
the thing
tighter to the
is
line.
like Jennings provides such a physical element over the middle where like I don't love Baker being a guy who goes over the middle. Like his
Yeah.
frame is not I don't want him to be that guy. They kind of need a receiver who's going to take some shots over the middle, bounce off some tackles, and not necessarily be Debo in terms of like short, targets on every single one and bounce off
Mhm.
every single tackle. That'll be the next guy we talk about.
Well,
But
let me do something real fast here because I'm
mhm,
all the way in on this Justin Jefferson comp, which should make him a first round pick just on principle.
right,
Let me read to you Lance Zerline, who I hold in the highest esteems, NFL draft analysis bio on Justin Jefferson. Spread scheme threw the field wide open for him. Needs to pay more attention to detail with his routes. He's too complacent to beat coverage with athletic ability. He's unable to run away and separate from tight man coverage. Size and strength across from him impede production. He'll take time adjusting to press looks as a pro. Limited one on one prowess to win 50-50 throws. Separation talent is just average outside. Okay. By the way, I think that's a fair assessment of what we had seen from
right.
Justin Jefferson in college. Let me read you the weaknesses of our friend here, Javon Baker. Excitable against favorable coverage and will rush through routes. Needs to be more physical and maintaining catch room on the boundary on verticals. Occasional inconsistencies finishing routes underneath. Loses focus from time to time and disappoints with drops. That is a thing.
Yep.
And then runs off defenders much more than engaging as an eager blocker. I don't see how you can see the high end of Javon Baker and not see somebody who catches the ball at an exceptional level with
To
no
me,
one else has
yeah.
that radius. No one else has that ability to pluck footballs out of the air.
To
Not in
me,
this class.
those concerns are largely like if you go into a situation where you don't have great coaching and
Mm,
you can't be honest with that guy about what his faults are, and maybe like as a person, maybe he just doesn't take coaching that well, or like he's not going to learn or develop, and that's legitimate. Those are things that
you got to figure that
GMs and
stuff out. Yeah.
and teams will find out that they will have a much better idea of. But if he's somebody that's even a little bit malleable and you have a really solid coaching staff, you believe in your wide receivers coach, you believe in your offensive coaches to call
Yeah.
stuff out, work with him. That's just discipline. That's getting a guy to buy into what you're doing.
Yeah.
And like at the NFL level, if you don't think a guy can do that, then don't draft him.
I mean, I think he'll be a round 2 pick, maybe even a
I do
round
too.
3 if you watch enough of the drops. Um, and I think that he has the upside. I mean, Justin
Jamar Chase
Jefferson's
also had a lot of drops.
totally. Justin Jefferson 6'1", 202. Javon
Wow.
Baker 6'1", 202. Justin Jefferson 4.440 yard dash. Javon Baker 4.5, but apparently he was hampered by a bit of an injury. 10-yard split 1.58. 10-yard split for Justin Jefferson 1.54. They have the exact same vertical jump. Justin Jefferson gets about 5 more inches in the broad jump. They both go over 10 feet.
That checks out. I could see I would expect Jefferson to be a slightly better athlete, but the
Slightly better
frame
athlete.
it's real similar.
It is, if you can get a guy who can pluck anything in the world out of the air in the second round, I think that's a huge win because it's the second round. You don't need him to be your ace, but just to have him for goal line sets, to have him for, hey, let's just slide him out there. And if we want to throw the ball to the boundary, Brock, you like throwing out there. Just put one out of bounds and only one guy can catch it. We're just going to push 135 yards down the
Yep.
field and he's going to be there. The comp that Zerline has is Josh Palmer.
I
Sure.
don't see that.
Sure. I'm telling you. I mean, maybe I was just hungover and delusional. Justin Jefferson. This guy,
No,
and he
I
might
see
also
it.
be out of the league in 3 years. But like,
That's fair.
he could be Justin Jefferson.
But if he could be Justin Jefferson, who cares? Take him.
You're taking him on principle. Who do you got?
All right. So this is a guy who people have listen. It's I I don't
You're
want to call it a
You're
lazy
already
comp.
starting with the caveats.
I wouldn't call it a lazy comp, but it's not. He's not Debo. This is Malachi Corley out of
Right.
Western Kentucky, um, and he's
It's a lazy
interesting.
comp. It's a lazy comp to call him Debo.
Right. To me, to be Debo, you need to be a guy who's rounder and just I don't know. If you take a hit, you're
Thick
bouncing
boy.
off it every time. He's a little shorter. I think the reason he's compared to Debo is because he's a short area target with run after catch. He was insane at Western Kentucky after the catch, had 8.5 yards per 8.5 yards after catch per catch
Right.
at Western Kentucky, which is crazy.
Right.
And so he's a guy that I don't know. If you want to replace Debo and you say, okay, let's get us a guy with a similar skill set, we can attack slants, screens, underneath stuff, do some gadget stuff, some end around, whatever, or maybe he's like a Ray Ray replacement. I can see that there. That
Yes.
said, that
Yes.
said, I'm kind of underwhelmed. Like, I don't see him really winning at the top of routes a lot.
Right.
The deep ball threat. Debo actually has very underrated uh, vertical ability. Like, when there's a
Yeah.
50-50 ball, he goes up for it and
He
catches it in a
boxes
way
out.
that, yeah. And it was more not this year's, the more the year before. But you go
That's right.
back to 2022, there were a ton of passes that Debo 50-50 ball, like he'd win. Like he has
Yep.
a real knack for it. I don't really see that with
No.
Corley. He's not winning on, they would just throw him deep balls that he wouldn't catch. I think he had a pretty underwhelming contested catch rate.
That's right.
So this is a guy where you put the ball in his hands and he's probably going to make something happen, right? So
He's a
if you're
good open
saying
field player. I mean,
agree,
he is. And he breaks a lot of tackles. He cuts through a defense. But we're watching him against Ohio State, which is about as good a film. Ohio State didn't have a great defense this year, but they do play something close to NFL coverage, or at least they have in
right?
the past. By the way, this is a lot of quarters off coverage, so
Yep.
welcome to the new NFL. In the no hip drop era, but I mean, he's getting wrapped up pretty easy. When I saw all the tackles that he was breaking, he's doing it against UTSA and
Yep.
Rice, and I think there's a big difference than what Debo Samuel was doing, where he was wrecking dudes in the SEC. I mean,
Yeah, the size just isn't there. The physicality is not the same. And listen, I get it. If you're just trying to do Debo does this, let's get a guy who does that.
yeah,
I can see some of it,
he's got
but
that dig route.
yeah, like he took a shot there, he got up.
Yeah,
But I am underwhelmed less because Corley, like I think if you put him in that role, he's going to do fairly well. If you put him in a limited role where he's just doing gadget stuff,
yeah,
anything underneath 10 yards, and you just say put him on a platform to run after the catch,
yeah.
I think he can be relatively successful. Uh, that said, is that what you really want? Like just a
No,
guy who's limited, who can run after catch? I think the evolution of the 49ers offense is yes, you obviously want somebody who can catch the ball and make a play after the catch. I think that should be a prerequisite for most wide receivers, unless like even Jawan Jennings, who's not that athletic, rips off yards after
that was his
catch.
whole thing in college. That was his whole thing
Right.
at Tennessee. He was all
Right.
production, and you didn't understand how it happened, but he just did it. But he was
Yes,
also a 7th-round draft pick.
exactly. So Corley, I just have trouble seeing a reason to draft him
Yes.
like round 5 to
I
me.
I I don't see it. I mean, I'll tell you what I do like him as, legitimately, because I'm again, go back to Lance Erline, who I think does it better than anybody else. He says like Brandon Ayuk or Debo Samuel when they were prospects. Corley had heavy percentage of his targets schemed around him, and he'll need to prove he could be more than just a quick game bully or gadget guy. Um, it just feels like there was an anchoring to, oh, this guy would look good in the 49ers offense because
Yep.
Western
Yeah.
Kentucky is also a very fascinating spot. Like they imported an entire football team at one point from, I think it was Houston Baptist, and they brought in their system. They're historically a very like as spread gets. They kind of fell away from that in recent years, and then they went out and got sort of an even more spread out offense that they used the transfer rules and just brought in the coaches and the offensive coordinator and like all the players to Western Kentucky. I don't trust that system. You'll
Yeah.
see if you're watching on YouTube with us, it's just screen passes. So here's what I like him as. I think he would be a great third down running back. Like legitimately.
He's your Tyrone Tracy Jr. comp.
He's no, Tyrone Tracy Jr. can do more than this guy. But yes,
Right.
you know what? I take back my skepticism and defensiveness on that because I love Tyrone Tracy Jr. There's a lot of similarities. Tyrone Tracy Jr. isn't as big. He doesn't weigh as much. So there's something to be said there.
I don't know, but Tracy Jr. feels more physical to me, and maybe that's just the nature of playing.
He's
the
more
running back
physical and he's
position.
faster. I mean,
Right.
that matters. This guy doesn't seem fast. And I do think, as you noted, with Debo, like not only is he doing most of his damage against subpar competition, or at least subpar compared to SEC or Big Ten as we watch this Ohio State film again, but he doesn't pop off the screen athletically. He does have the tenacity. He's definitely got the crazy, which is good. You know, he is a physical player, but he doesn't have those physical traits. And Debo looked like a man amongst boys in college.
And at the Senior Bowl where he was just dominating people.
If you're asking somebody to be the next Debo Samuel, they need to be a cut above in every game that they play. And the fact that he wasn't a cut above against Ohio State, he just looked like a dude, tells me everything I need to know. Because Dylan Laub was out there giving the best competition New Hampshire played the business. Right. You know, like he looked like he should have been playing for the other team. That's if I understand that, you know, you can't get the ball to yourself, but if you're a gadget player for Western Kentucky and you're supposed to be drafted early, if your comp is Debo Samuel, you should look like you should be playing for Ohio State when you play Ohio State.
Right. I want him to take every single catch, break 2 tackles, run for 20 yards every play, which is not like a reasonable. And listen, like he's
I would like a little more pop.
Plays. Right. Like he's making nice plays, like he's making guys miss.
He makes one guy miss.
I want to see someone who bridges the gap between this and Baker in terms of we talked about Baker. If you're inputting them in the Debo role, it's not that they need to be the Debo role. It's that they need to have a little bit of physicality going over the middle, in my opinion. If they're going to fit in as a Z receiver, motion a lot, do a lot of other stuff, block a lot. And Baker, I think, lacked that a little bit. I still think he's a damn good enough receiver, and Brock Purdy is an evolution of your offense that, like, if he's there in the 3rd round, I think you'd kind of be foolish not to take him. Take great wide receivers, regardless of whether they're the exact fit. And Corley is like a guy who's just short gadget. So I think they need somebody who has closer to Baker's skill set. Right.
You can't. If this guy was going 6th round, I'd be all over him.
Sure.
He's 5th round, I'd be all over him because I can see the upside. Right? He's crazy. He is willing to do the dirty work over the middle, and it's like you could do so much work. It's worth the flyer. But when you're paying 2nd, 3rd, day 2 premium, which, you know, again, there's some level of let's roll the dice here. I don't want to have to roll such a specific number, right? I'd like to at least have 50-50 odds, and right now I feel like it's 1 in 10, 2 in 10.
I'm just not all that compelled, and I don't think you are either.
I'm not in on Corley, but I'll tell you, if you're looking to bridge the gap between Javon Baker, who we love as upside, but is probably an X receiver, and Corley, who is thick bowling ball boy out here doing all the gadget stuff, giving you those Debo Samuel vibes, whether you like it or not, whether it's smart or not. Let's talk about Xavier Legette out of South Carolina, who is probably the most talked about wide receiver in this 49ers universe that we exist in. again, I'm gonna sound like I'm an
I
idiot.
I love the comp you're about to throw out.
I'm gonna sound like a flippin' idiot. I mean, probably not the first time.
Nor will it be the last.
I wish I had enough neurons firing last night that I could have avoided this. I really do. I really do. But this guy reminds me of AJ Brown. He's the exact same size. Actually, he's bigger, which is kind of stunning
Which is
because
insane to think. Like, when I think of AJ Brown, I think he's, like, almost 6'2", 6'3", 6 like,
AJ
200.
Brown is the biggest receiver in the NFL
Right,
in the way he plays. And you
right.
want to talk about box out ability, like nobody does it better than AJ Brown. Uh, this guy and AJ Brown, by the way, I think in Philly because they're such an inept offense, I think his separation ability in running in the open field is really underrated. Like there are some plays where he boxes somebody out, they don't tackle him, and then he turns around and just sprints into the end zone faster than everybody, like he's running the 100-meter dash. Like I think that he is a stunning player, and he obviously put up crazy numbers at Ole Miss and um, kind of a borderline 1-2. The one that I wanted to go to is I'm like, well, maybe he's Juju, maybe he's Juju Smith-Schuster, but Juju Smith-Schuster doesn't just wreck dudes like this. He never did. He was kind of
Right.
the technician, a bigger body, but a technician, a possession receiver, not really, he'd go over the middle, but he wasn't an open field threat. Xavier Legette has some flaws. There's no question about it. I don't know if he's all that. I don't know. I don't know if I love his hands legitimately. Like, I think that there are some issues with catching the football, which is not
Yeah.
a great way to start if you're talking about a wide receiver. But in terms of his ability to just make stuff happen, I mean, he is 6'1", 221 pounds. He looks bigger. He just looks massive. Looks absolutely massive. By the way, AJ Brown, 6', 226.
It feels
What?
like he would be, like, I know I said 6'2", 6'3", that's after I found out how much,
Yeah,
how
I would
tall
have
he is.
guessed 6'5".
Right. Like, at least 6'4", right? Like, he plays huge.
225 is huge, to be fair. At 6 foot, that's huge. Legette's getting an inch. He's probably 3 or 4 pounds lighter. I mean,
Right.
he's to go to the athletic article. He's got the big ass, which I've been on that bandwagon forever.
That was awesome. Dieter, by the way, has long been a proponent, and I'm in agreement with him, that you need to have, what do you call it? The powerhouse.
The
Powerhouse, which
powerhouse. No ass,
is,
no pass.
hey, I've got it. I'll be honest.
I don't,
Um,
and that's why we're doing this. Could you imagine? I don't. Never had one. Never had one. And I always kind of wondered, like, why do I have no explosion as an athlete? I'll tell you, no ass.
that's what it is. Xavier Legette, not to get weird, but powerhouse.
It's not just that. I mean, if we got to get really weird and specific, high ass. So I mean, no hamstring issues there. It's something sometimes you got to worry about the low ass. Low ass is fat. High ass is muscle. I've been doing this a long time, Jake. Been doing this a long time. I'm telling you, it was a 95% hit rate. It's so
That's
much
so
easier
good.
to do it with college. These are 21-year-old men playing already for millions of dollars, then going to get more millions. It was much weirder when I was doing it for high school. But you can ask Matt Rule, you can ask a lot of coaches around the South at the time if my my no pass rule worked or not. And let me tell you, I found some dudes. There's a lot of dudes in the league right now who I only found because I would go down the list of everybody at the camp and just say, okay, who's got the powerhouse? And if you didn't have one, I didn't put
It's
you on.
pretty reliable.
I literally marked you off the list, and you had to do something incredible and special
Right.
that I had to notice to get yourself back on the list. But it was just an immediate. It was guess who? You know the game where you have the flipboard stuff,
Oh, I know guess who.
and immediately it was just like man or woman, or does he have hair or not? And you just flip down half of them. By the way, the original guess who, all you had to do was go, is he black? And everyone there was
And there was
one black guy.
2 of them.
Yeah, so couldn't pick
Well,
them. You would lose almost immediately. They fixed that, but that was the real cheat code. Is he white? Could be
This
it.
guy's played a lot of Guess Who in his day.
I just remember that. I remember that really being unsettling to me. Like they got 2 black people on the entire board. It's like going to a Cubs game, only 2 black people. Meanwhile, we're talking about high school butts. I think Xavier Legette is a day 2 pick, but when he flashes, again, you get back to this guy could be incredible. And I don't think that it's a stretch when you watch him to think that that upside could be there every snap.
Right.
Especially at South Carolina. I mean, Spencer Rattler is terrible. He's
What's
really bad.
funny, what's funny, there's a lot of people grinding the draft right now that are very reputable that are falling in love with Spencer Rattler.
They see the
Like
arm, and that's all they see.
they're like, no, they think he moves well in the pocket, and
He better. That
I'm
offensive line sucked too.
gonna have to go back and watch. But I just was disgusted by Spencer Rattler.
I watched a lot of
And
SEC. I watched a lot of SEC football. I watch a lot of. By the way, with quarterbacks, I'm strictly of the mindset that you have to watch full games. Like not just cut-ups. I'm talking like
right.
full games. Like you have to watch his team play defense in order to understand if he's a good quarterback or not, because so much a quarterback is situational. And so and Spencer Rattler was an A+ idiot quarterback for South Carolina. Like his defense is out there, just did
Right.
a 9-play drive and 102 degrees. And he was audibling at the line, spreading everybody out. And then he threw 3 passes and 6 seconds came off the clock. I mean, that kind of, I understand that it's a spread it out game, but like that kind of stupid shit matters. I can't take you seriously.
Such an obsession with like, it's weird because there's a lot of very smart people, and the consensus now is if you don't have a fucking cannon of an arm, you're not worth picking. Which is like
Patrick Mahomes broke everybody.
Right. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't look to physical talent. If I'm drafting a
It matters.
quarterback in the first round, they better have physical talent. That's why we railed against Mac Jones.
That's right.
But you also need to have a quarterback with his head on straight who, when they look at the field, they go, "Oh, this look isn't going to go against that coverage."
Mhm.
And they can switch to something else, or they know, like, I don't know, they can see post-snap rotation and make a quick decision. And you're not always gonna get that right away, and a lot of it looks worse in college, and that's why evaluation's so hard because some college offenses are
True.
just a nightmare, and they don't allow all that stuff.
South
But, like,
Carolina in particular.
but you can get a little bit of a sense if a guy's an idiot and just doesn't get it.
Spencer Rattler looks like a guy who's been told that he's God's gift to quarterbacking since he was in 8th grade, and he does have a cannon. He's got an absolute tank for an arm. He had unreal receivers. Really, like Legette is there.
Yeah.
They have a freshman. I don't have his name in front of me. I think it was Noah Brown. 6'4", 245 pounds, and he can run the 100 meters in 10.2 seconds. He had that guy on the field. Not all that often because they had such good wide receivers.
Nick Harbor. Noah Brown was a former Cowboys
receiver. Thank you. I appreciate that. Nick Harbor. South Carolina was so good that guy was a situational player as a rookie, as a freshman. They had so many good receivers. And he is just by the way, tank for him. He's the absolute truth. Spencer Rattler threw so many balls into guys' feet, so many balls over their heads, out of bounds on an out route. I mean, he's not a good quarterback. And it comes down to coach hubris and scout hubris. Scouts want to find the highest upside guys because if it hits, then they look like a genius. They only remember your George Kittles. They don't remember your well, we go down the list.
Any running back, the 49ers.
They don't remember your Danny Grays, which they should. But they'll give you credit for finding
Joe
George
Williams,
Kittle.
Ty Davis Price.
They'll give you credit for George Kittle though every time. Because the hits just everyone expects you to fail, and so the hits just outweigh everything.
Real quick, it is funny how whenever the 49ers draft someone like in the 3rd round, we go, And then they talk him up and really go, oh, okay, let's not pass judgment. Maybe, maybe it could work out. And then we're right. We're
Yeah.
right. Like Cam
Yeah.
Latu, I'm like, oh, maybe I might be wrong. And maybe he turns around this year and he's great.
Maybe.
Maybe.
But it's scout
Anything's
hubris and it's
possible.
coaching hubris because coaches now, Mahomes broke everybody in that there were no good air raid quarterbacks until Andy Reid got Patrick
Right.
Mahomes. He's the exception that proved the rule. And so everyone goes, I can't teach talent, but I can teach this guy how to be an NFL player. And it's like, dude, no, you can't. No, you can't.
Yep.
Kyle Shanahan can't do it. Kevin O'Connell can't do it. This guy has been he's not a good quarterback. And so this is the guy who was throwing footballs to Xavier Legette. And Xavier Legette is still making big ass plays against SEC secondaries.
Also has the best accent of any player. Sounds like a true like crawdad fisherman who's like lived inside of a bayou.
Mullins, South Carolina, baby.
Awesome.
He is all Mullins, South Carolina.
And it's like that's another thing. Like this guy's gonna play hard. Like
no doubt.
No question.
This is why I think he's a legitimate option for the 49ers because he's going to be a great blocker. Inline blocker,
sure.
He's going to be fantastic.
No qualms about his physicality or commitment to the run game.
He's a little tight.
Agreed.
Not a fluid athlete.
Right.
That's fine. It's just
right, but it's like if you're replacing Debo doesn't like
Debo's not a fluid athlete either.
Debo doesn't. He just catches. He just makes plays. Like
this guy has deep. I think this guy can win at all three levels. I think he could dominate short, middle, intermediate numbers, and outside, or deep and outside. I think he could be great. Obviously, reverse all of them. And I think he'd be great there too. Not the best hands, not the best athlete, but he's big. He is straight line fast, like crazy. 4.4 at 6'1", 221 is pretty impressive. Good split, big vertical jump, 40-inch vertical jump. This guy's AJ Brown, man. I wanted somebody else. It's just so plainly obvious. It's like AJ Brown decided that he didn't have enough football in his life, so every Saturday he'd fly to Columbia, South Carolina, and be Xavier Legette, quote unquote, and he put on a silly accent and some dreads. Like it is. I know that I'd said, "Oh, this guy's Justin Jefferson. This guy's AJ Brown." It's like, well, who's going to be next? Is this guy Jerry Rice? Well, sort of, but
well, that's a good transition to our last guy.
Yeah, talk to me about Jerry's kid.
All right, so here's the thing, and this is not a shot at 49ers fans.
It's a shot at 49ers fans. What was that?
It's a little bit of a shot at 49ers fans.
I'll take. You don't have to say it. I'll say it for you. Come on now, get it together, people.
Here's the thing. Whenever and to be fair, I get it. There's like this is a weird draft class where you got Jerry's kid, you got Frank Gore's kid,
you
got Luke McCaffrey, Terrell Owens' kid. So there is like an element of that would be cool, for the nostalgia factor.
But would it? Like what nostalgia? Like the nostalgia factor is fun for a day, and then training camp shows up, and then it's like, oh crap, we could have gotten a much better player.
Right. So that's where I'm coming from. Is I was dubious of Brendan Rice, because whenever 49ers fans are talking up a nostalgia draft pick, I'm like, but is he good at football? And why haven't I heard people other than 49ers fans talking him up? I think it's a fair question.
It's fair.
And I watched him, and at the start, I was like, oh,
yep,
he is decent at least. Like, yes. I think he's a really fluid mover. He's got really good size. His athleticism is incredibly mid, like straight across the board, just average.
That's what they said about his dad.
That's pretty good.
Honestly, I think that's part of the problem, is that because his dad was not heralded as a god.
Well, didn't he run his 40 in some weird pro day in the middle of nowhere in the rain or like,
His entire career
am I
was
making
played
that
in the
up?
middle of nowhere in the rain. Like that
Right.
the only person who thought he was the truth was Walsh. And they had an offense that helped make him the truth. Now he's the greatest receiver of all
Right.
time. No one's debating Jerry Rice's bona fides here. It's just that he was a mystery. There was an inscrutability to Jerry Rice that persists to this day. So when
Right.
you are of him, when you are his progeny. Is it prodigy or prodigy?
Progeny.
Progeny. Thank you.
Unless he is a prodigy, in which case,
Well, yeah, when you are his progeny, you are presumed to be a prodigy because
wow.
you give the genetic benefit of the doubt. You go, I don't really see it. I don't really understand what's going on here. But his dad, I also didn't understand, and he turned out to be the greatest receiver of all time. Like, I think it's nepo benefit of the doubt.
Right. And so, I go into this to try to have a blank slate. Initially, I'm like pretty impressed. Like he's pretty fluid. Like his footwork is really solid.
It
Like
is
I like his footwork, and I think he
technician.
needs to have good footwork to make up for lack of top end speed. And his physicality is decent. Like he can break away from some tackles. Like he's not going to rip off everything,
Right.
but I feel like he's a guy who can take a shot, get up. He does take a shot in this game against Utah. He
Utah.
gets clobbered.
Well, Utah loves
Um,
giving shots.
so I was impressed. That said, I kept watching, and he really struggles to win. He's running a lot of nines, and he's
Yeah.
not winning on a lot of nines. Like they're just throwing deep balls to him, and sometimes Caleb Williams is just missing him. To be fair, and I was like, "What's going on with this?" He's
It's a
throwing a lot of
large.
like moon shots. Like
There's a lot of conversation to be had there, my friend.
I don't know exactly what that is, um, but it's something where I watched him, and I just I was like, yeah, he's okay. And I think in terms of if you want to do the thing where you're, like I said, bridging the gap between Corley and Javon Baker, he's a little bit in that range in
Okay.
between them, but he doesn't have like the top end athleticism. That's the play he gets murdered on.
That's right.
Um,
Yeah,
where
he
it's
he, he
just
doesn't look great off of that
right.
play.
But I don't know. I think he's a guy where
Where would you draft him?
I would start looking at him in the 4th round. I wouldn't look at him before that. I think he's sort of projected as a 3rd rounder, but to me, he feels day 3 firmly, like 4 to 6. I think
What's his player count?
I felt that he's a little Kendrick Bourne
Okay.
like in that, kind of out of the slot. He's got some decent footwork and doesn't have the top end athleticism, has
No.
a decent frame, but not like just this massive one. And he's got enough
Liquid.
physicality where he's going to take some hits,
Yeah.
but I don't really want to spend a premium on drafting him because I don't see any traits where I go, wow, you need to have him. I think he's solid, but I'm pretty lukewarm on him.
Do you think that he will be in the NFL in 5 years?
Just it's like tough because I'm trying to do the thing of it depends what scheme he's
Well, I
in,
mean that
but
matters, but like just know that half of the schemes. I mean, half of the schemes would work for him, half of them wouldn't.
is
Is
he
it
in
even
the
tighter than that?
NFL in 5 years? It's
The
a
fact that you can't
very good
immediately say
question.
yes is a little jarring.
I definitely can't give a firm
Okay.
stamp of approval.
Well, in and of that, he shouldn't be anything close to a day 2 pick.
Right. I would say he's a guy who, if he gets in the right system, is gonna be like a good wide receiver 3, you know?
I
Maybe
think
can work his way to a wide receiver too, I think, if he develops
yeah.
the right way, because his footwork is really good, he's got a nice frame, if he gets a quarterback who's got an understanding with, then he can have a pretty decent career,
That's right.
but I don't know, I don't trust mediocre NFL teams to develop mid-level talent
I think he could
is
be
where I'm at.
I think a team that plays a little bit more spread
Yep,
could find some value in him because you can line him up in the
right.
slot. and he's got enough for you.
Agreed.
He's got
I
enough
would
for you
also
there.
say USC, just I don't know what Lincoln Riley's doing over there. Let me just talk to the camera here. I don't
Yeah,
know what
thank you.
Lincoln Riley's doing. Defense was a disaster. The offense wasn't exactly great either. It was a mess. Like,
I
they're
hated
just
watching them.
spreading it out. Some of the splits where guys are starting out of bounds, basically. And I know some colleges do that with tight split. It doesn't make sense to me. I don't. They're just chucking it all around the field. It's a mess. And they're having Brendan Rice, who, again, mid-level athleticism. Look at his testing; he's like 50 percentile or near that
Yeah,
in just about every key metric, and he's running just vertical down the field every single time. Like, let him cut inside. Let
yeah.
him give him a choice right out to the outside. Like, I'd
Isn't it?
love to see
Isn't
him
it?
run a whip route. You
Isn't
know,
it pretty telling that the supposed number one overall quarterback in the NFL draft, you can't tell me anything all that positive about his wide receivers? I mean, there were wide receivers that were there,
Yep.
and no one's of all these wide receivers. All these wide receivers. I mean, I could look at Drake May. He had he had great wide receivers. You know, you look at Penix, great wide receivers.
Yep.
I'm not taking anything away from the quarterbacks. I mean, Tom Brady played with Randy Moss for a while. Like, you know, everyone wants to say, well, you know, doing it. Everyone wants to be Patrick Mahomes doing it with that. He's got Travis Kelce. He doesn't need another one.
Right.
You know, there are some quarterbacks that are crappy that have great wide receivers. It makes them less crappy. We've seen one here. I think there's one in Miami. Like that exists. Do you think Kirk Cousins was a really good player because he had Stephon Diggs and then he got Justin Jefferson? Or do you think that those guys maybe maximize their potential because they had a pretty good quarterback? Right. I just find it strange that at USC, which is running in theory a elite Big 12 offense, the quarterback doesn't ever look like he knows what he's doing. And the wide receivers, who should be just putting up monster numbers because they have this unbelievable talent, they're in the Lincoln Riley offense, are mid at best. I just find that interesting. And I'm starting to think that I wouldn't bet on any of it at all. So good luck to the Bears.
Yeah, I mean, I won't pretend that I've watched all of Caleb Williams all year, but there is, like, every time I watched USC, it was like, what is going on here? Like,
Mahomes broke
everything,
everybody.
nothing was run smoothly. You're not like, okay, that was a clinical drive. Like, everything was messy. He's just running around. It reminded me of Jalen Hurts, where Jalen Hurts is just running around every play.
You mean Jalen Hurts, who got benched at Alabama?
And granted, for Jalen Hurts' credit, the Eagles didn't run pre-snap motion while the rest of the NFL figured out that it's a pretty useful thing to do and helps you identify coverages. But also, like, you don't need to bail out of the pocket after 2 seconds every time.
Yeah, when you have
And
the
I'm
best
not
offensive line in football, by the way.
Right. So,
listen,
there are concerns.
Football hard. Football so hard. Okay. I also feel like I got the better of this exercise.
But here's the thing. I'd watched your guys already and I liked them. So I was like, you take those guys, I'll take these guys that I see 49ers draft Twitter has some interest in.
Yeah.
And I'll talk these guys and say why I'm mid on them.
I would say that both Xavier Legette and Javon Baker are viable at 31, but I'd prefer to trade down and get him at 40.
Yep. Yeah, Legette is a guy where I don't think he's going to be there at 63.
Neither of these guys should. These guys, if these guys don't go in the top 50, something's gone horribly wrong with the system.
Legette, I think, is much more of a second round lock than Baker is, but I think Baker is probably. It depends on the team.
It
depends on the team because some teams are going to value him more than Legette. But I would guess Baker goes after him.
Stunning how good the wide receivers are every year.
The guys we didn't even talk about a ton of them. Like, there's like I like Ricky Pearsall out of Florida.
Pearsall, so good. I watched him last night.
Good.
I mean, the catch against Charlotte is unbelievable. Like, humanly impossible. Great. One of the greatest catches in the history of football. Okay, so that exists. He is.
Dude, listen, he can move.
He has got crazy speed.
He's unfortunately got little stumpy arms, but I don't really care.
They did a nice job at Florida too. They had some kind of crappy quarterback play. They did a nice job of scheming him. I mean, if people are talking up Malachi Corley as like a Debo 2.0, like give me Ricky Pearsall all day,
Yes.
every day. Open field, he might not break as many tackles, but open field, he's a dude. He's an
Dude, he
absolute
can
dude.
he can move too. Like,
And he's a great receiver. I mean,
yeah.
he's a top 50 player. All of these guys, like when I watch him, I go, oh, he should be a top 10, 15 pick. Except there's too many of them. Because everyone has to
Yeah.
get up and get a quarterback or a left tackle because there's not enough of those. You now just get elite, like guys who would be the first guy off the board 5 years ago, 10 years ago. They're not
Pearsall's
just
route
going
running
50.
polish is crazy.
He's really,
Like
really good. He's
like
so good. And
I think
I hate the Florida Gators. So me saying this says
yeah.
a lot.
No, if he had longer arms and a better contested catch radius, where he could go up and get stuff, like he's a first rounder. I think he
He should be a first rounder
probably
now. If the Niners took him at 31, I think that people would say, oh, you overdrafted him. I think they'd look like geniuses.
it's the same thing of like, do you want a guy who's a contributor day one? I would be shocked if Ricky Pearsall doesn't contribute day one.
Here's how much I think of Ricky Pearsall. I'm certain the Rams are going to draft him.
Oh, for sure.
I'm certain of it. The Rams are going to get him, and then everyone's going to be like, how did you let the Rams get Ricky Pearsall in like 2 years? And they're just going to be like, hey, Cooper Kupp, just go. We got the
Right.
second Cooper Kupp. I mean, it's
The Rams are like, we want guys who have
who does
just,
Ricky
like, put
Pearsall
their
remind
life
you of?
It's tough because I'm thinking of guys who have that athleticism, but
You know
don't
who
have
it
the
is.
catch radius.
You
Do you
know
have a
who it
comp?
is. I just said his name.
Cup?
He's Cuppian. Catches
It checks out.
everything, but you do need to get it somewhere in the window. And he is just clean. He's clean. He always has separation. If he needs to put hands on somebody, he gets separation. If he needs to run past somebody, he gets separation. He's just open. He's always flipping open. And you would never notice. I mean, he's actually a little stronger. You would never notice for a second that he's an NFL player. What is he, like 5'11", 195, 200?
Cup is weirdly 6'2".
Sure. Somehow Kupp is 2 inches taller than A.J. Brown. What a sport. I'm telling you right now, like, again, I am just apparently a hyperbole machine. Pearsall's so good. He's so good.
Yep.
The fact that you can get these receivers in the second round. In fact, you know what the Niners should do is they should trade all their receivers for second round picks and just roll it out with these guys. I'm
not even kidding you. That's not the worst idea in the world.
I'm so in love. Let Brock Purdy and these guys all grow up together and just roll with it. If I'm the Chiefs and I'm sitting at 31,
that's actually not a bad idea.
And it's just like, hey, you know how I can pay some guy who sucks $10 million? What if I get all the second round picks and just take all of these wide receivers and one of them won't work? You'll miss something. Javon Baker's, lack of dog will burn him or something. Or Xavier Legette will, his hips will be too tight and he can't get out of anything. Like, there's always a downside. They're not Marvin Harrison Jr., but the fact is they're not that far off from being Marvin Harrison Jr. They're so good at what it is they do. And it's like, dude, you could take Marvin Harrison Jr. 9th or take Xavier Legette or Ricky Pearsall 50th.
Also, you got an offseason. You got an offseason where Purdy's not rehabbing, and he's going to be like,
he's got nothing else to do. He has no money. He can't go have fun.
He's going to be like, you guys come here. We're going to spend every single day of the offseason together working.
Yeah. We're going to go to we're going to go to 127 degree Mesa, Arizona, and we're going to work.
Right. Sorry, Nick Zakel, but we're no longer roommates. I need a wide receiver to live with me.
That's right. It won't happen. It shouldn't happen. It's preposterous.
No, but it is.
By the way, if I'm the Kansas City Chiefs, there are way worse options than taking two of these guys and just throwing a knife in the middle and saying, okay, one of you gets to be Patrick Mahomes' number one receiver next year.
Right. I mean, that is like an interesting thought process, right? Of like, that's like a Madden move. You go and you just say, our receivers are expensive, and I'm just going to trade them for a first and or second, or like a second and a third, and just take swings at all the guys I really like in the draft, and a decent amount of them are going to work out. And then instead of paying a ton of money, we got receivers for the next 4 years who cost nothing.
The fact that Puka Nacua was a 5th-round draft pick last year, and that these guys are all available in the 2nd, 3rd round. I mean, if I'm the Chiefs, sorry to go down this rabbit hole, but I'm just flabbergasted at how good these receivers are and how low they'll go, given their level of talent. If I'm the Chiefs, I have Rashee Rice, and then I can cut literally everybody else.
Right.
It's Rashee Rice and Travis Kelce.
They probably should get everyone else.
And I go, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take Xavier Legette, and we're going to put him at X, and we're going to get Javon Baker, and we're going to put, we'll put Baker at X, we'll put Legette at Z, and we're going to have Rice doing that little 7-yard drag over the middle. Mahomes would throw 60 touchdown passes in year 1. They would have no idea what to do. They would just be so athletic and so incredible.
Are they just going to win the Super Bowl every year? Like, is that...
As long as they got that guy. As long as they got 1-5.
If the Bills weren't cowards.
The Bills could do this. The Bills could do this. The Bills don't have wide receivers. Honestly, I don't. There's we're in a very weird area. And as far ahead as the Niners are in terms of like seeing how the special teams was going to go, like,
oh yeah, that theory was right.
It was nailed it from a mile away. Why is it wide receivers are making so much money when they seem so goddamn replaceable?
It's a good question.
Like, you're paying Tyreek Hill, who is awesome, $30 million. There is no other Tyreek Hill. That's fair. But there are so many good receivers every year in the draft. Like, maybe it's not the best idea to have two $20 million receivers. Maybe they should trade Brandon Ayuk. Like,
I know. That's the funny thing is, I think they're going to end up paying him, and I think they're going to keep Debo. But when people talk about keeping two $20 million receivers, I also think it's not going to be $20 million this year.
You're right. You're right.
I think the real question is
Debo's gone
long
after
term.
This year.
Yeah. Right. Long term, are you going to hold on to two? I think for 1 year, it's not ideally how you'd build a roster, but like I had trouble seeing them move
quarterback. So who gives a shit?
Yeah, exactly. No one else is a quarterback this cheap that's producing at the level that Brock Purdy is. So like all the notions about how to build a roster get fundamentally changed when your quarterback costs you nothing and your backups are making a total of, I think, $4 million on the cap this year.
Yeah. Okay. So, just for reference, I just need to do this so that I don't sound like a complete idiot beyond the normal. Because I just comped in the span of an hour Xavier Legette to AJ Brown, Javon Baker to Justin Jefferson, and Ricky Pearsall to Cooper Kupp. For the record, I don't think Troy Franklin is any good. So I just want to make sure that everyone knows that I do not like somebody who could go in the first round. Like, I don't think that Troy Franklin is good. I think that it was all scheme and he can't separate and he's always fast, but it never shows up on film. Doesn't produce any broken tackles at all. Pac-12, perfect conditions damn near every game. I think that unless he's playing in Miami, it's going to be a real problem for him.
I love it. I think we got to throw some shade at somebody. Like, we're not just,
also Xavier Worthy. Come on, get the hell out of here.
I was just going to say, it feels like Ruggs.
The Raiders will take him to honor Al.
Feels Ruggsy. But I just don't trust like super skinny guys who weigh. I don't trust people who weigh what I weigh. To
play professional football.
No, a guy who's like taller than me and weighs what I weigh, or like that's not good. Yeah. Like, you're gonna get killed. Like, go do track and field.
I'm also not a big Jalen McMullen fan. I got questions there. We get questions. Let me figure out the tight end, the North Carolina wide receiver, because I think he's
Devontae Walker.
Tez Walker. I think he's a sleeper. Who else at wide receiver do I like? Yeah, Roman Wilson's okay at Michigan. He'll probably end up with the
He got a
Chargers.
little bit overhyped, I think, but
True.
he's a guy who's like 3rd round, okay, nice pick, and then people are like, "He should be a 1st round pick." It's like, get a grip.
Get the hell out of here.
Get a
I
grip.
really like Keon Coleman.
Yeah, that guy's a freak. There is like an element of like, where is his head at? But he's got crazy athleticism.
He's got some like George Pickens in him.
Yes. Very Pickensy.
Very Pickensy. Adonai Mitchell, a dude at
Oh, yeah.
Texas. Now that's the thing. Like he played at Texas. You're in the Big 12. You have a quarterback that slangs it. Like I should see you
Right.
kick ass, and all he did was kick ass. He's a big catch
Dude.
player.
He's a really interesting one where pure like talent, he's as good as any receiver in this class.
No doubt.
He is a absolute freak. But you also watch on tape where he's like doing the Debo thing of just being like, I am not involved in this play, and I'm not going to pretend that I'm involved in this play.
Well, that's that
Now I heard,
Sarkisian.
I watched someone break it down that like he knows what the play is, so he knows he doesn't have to be involved. Well, like you're in college, pretend you're involved every play. Like you don't get to. I don't know. I don't love that going into the league. I want a guy who more is like I got to prove it than a guy who thinks he's God's gift. I don't know.
I mean, there's a little bit of Pickens in him too.
For sure. But at the same time, you're talking skill set. Like this guy is massive, has
6'2", 205 with a 4.3, 440-yard dash, 152 split, 40-inch or 39-inch vertical jump, and an 11.4 broad jump. So crazy burst off the line.
And I was watching Kamari Lassiter of Georgia, the corner who apparently ran like a 4.6 or something terrible.
Yeah.
Which I will say for corners, I think matters a tiny bit less than people make it out to. Like you need to have functional speed. You didn't seem crazy fast to me on tape, but he seemed fine. But I watched him against Mitchell, and there's one play, and I think there was like a linebacker that came down. It was a play action, so it wasn't totally on Lassiter, but Mitchell just goes whoop, and on a slant, and he's in the end zone with 5 yards of space in man coverage.
I'm trying to think who Mitchell really reminds me of. Calvin Ridley.
It's not bad.
Like Calvin Ridley when he was like cooking. That might be a stretch.
Right.
He's not Amon-Ra St. Brown because he's not as twitchy.
Yeah, and he's like tighter. I'm like,
He's a tough one. Because he's so fast. He's so fast. And he was just such a dude. He was such a dude at Texas. That matters. We'll see. There's some people saying, oh, he's a top 50 prospect. I mean, there's also some buzz that he could go as the first wide receiver. Like, I don't know. I don't think he's anywhere near.
I think he could be the first one after the three of Marvin Harrison, Neighbors, and Odunze. But beyond that, I don't know.
I'm looking for somebody to comp him to. I got nothing.
That's the thing of like, regardless of where his head's at,
he has the 5th best RAS of all time.
He's way too much of a dude to not. I think he'll probably end up being top 20 pick.
It's hard. Come on now. He's got a 9.99 RAS, and he dominated at Texas.
Okay, real quick, before we get out of here, I have to show this Ricky Pearsall catch.
It's one against Charlotte?
I believe so.
Oh yeah.
It's the one against Kentucky, but it's the catch.
Show me again.
It's coming up.
No, this is Charlotte.
Oh, yep. Here we go.
It's the most stupid offhand pluck it out of the air.
Pop. Takes it. I mean, granted, they kind of hit each other. They hit him.
Yeah. But if you haven't, first off, it's the first thing if you Google Ricky Pearsall that will show up because it's one of the great catches of all time. Think about the Odell Beckham Jr. catch. That he did that in the middle of the field. He's
just so good.
He's just
so good. That's all there is to it.
The fact is, we're talking about Adonai Mitchell, who's 21 years old, was the best wide receiver on a Texas team that played in the playoff, and has one of the 5 greatest RAS scores
And
ever.
he's like maybe
We're like,
the
maybe he'll go in
fourth
the
wide
top
receiver.
20. Maybe he'll go in the
Maybe.
top 20.
Like,
Like what? What are
it's
we
getting to
doing?
the point where regardless of what you do with Ayuk and Debo, I think you draft a wide receiver in the first 3 rounds if the right one's there, and I think there's a lot of right ones.
Maybe they'll just do this again every year in perpetuity. Maybe this is just how wide receivers operate now. Maybe you just wait and don't draft any wide receivers. But like, I am
I don't
just
know.
floored. I knew it was good. And the more I watch, I go, it can't be this good. It can't be this good. And then it turns out I think it's this good. And
Yeah.
if the 49ers want to trade 31, I think that someone's going to get an absolute
It's
stud.
also something where, like, say you get round 2 and you go, "We actually don't need Debo." Like, we're gonna trade Debo now, post June 1, save a bunch of money.
I mean, legitimately, they might find out at rookie minicamp.
Right. And that's like here's the thing, like, I think that's a pretty reasonable way to go, where you go, "All right."
You're never going to get you're never going to get a draft pick this year for him. So,
Well, you
yeah,
could, but it's gonna be tougher.
so tricky. You can't get a draft pick with something that can't happen until June 1st.
Well, you could trade him before that. You just eat $20 million
$20
this
million,
year.
which isn't worth it.
You'd still save, I think, 8 million.
No,
Something.
I'd rather just have Debo Samuel.
And I think they're gonna say the same thing. I'm just saying they save enough where it's like a conversation rather than
Let's have this conversation. The reason you draft a wide receiver is for the reason that we extrapolate to the end point with trading Debo Samuel, because you don't trust that he's going to be on the field for 18 games next year. You're certain he's going to miss
prepare
time.
yourself to move on regardless.
But just that, you just have someone that you can slide into his job. You cannot pay somebody on the open market to be Debo Samuel's legitimate backup. But you can draft somebody and hope that you can bring them along to be Debo Samuel in the future and get some flashes of it in the present.
Right.
If Debo's going to play 10 games for you, you need to fill 7 games. That's why you draft one.
That's incredibly logical and a great take. And what I will close with is that I think there's also something to just drafting a guy where you're like, this guy's sick.
This guy's awesome.
Like, this guy
fucking
dope. Like where Kyle's just like, fuck yeah. Like he's just
if Ricky Pearsall is there in the 3rd round, if he's sitting there in the 3rd round and the Niners don't trade up to get him because he fucking rips, he's just fucking awesome. I think we ride. I think that's our January 6th and we storm 49-49.
Just go get dudes. Just
get
go
dudes.
Yeah.
You're gonna need one.
Yeah.
You might not need it today, but then you're gonna regret not having a dude later.
It's not a bad thing to have a very good, very cheap wide receiver.
All right. On Thursday, we're just going to talk about Devondre Sweat's Senior Bowl tape for 45 minutes straight because he won every rep. And I love him.
He is large. For those of you watching, in case you didn't know what large.
Yeah.
Large.
It's funny too, because no butt, no ass. He is the exception that proves the rule. No powerhouse. But he just owns everybody.
I mean, his entire body is a powerhouse, so that's a good exception to the rule.
Yeah, we'll do Sweat and other things of that nature because, man, we're gonna need a couple of days to calm down from watching wide receivers.
That's right.
All right, Jake. Anything else you want to tell the people?
No, just stay locked in with us, and if you got any weird questions, anything weird.
Oh yeah, you want to do a mailbag? We'll do a mailbag. Shoot us some weird stuff, guys. I want you to get as granular and strange as you possibly can, and we'll gladly accept the challenge. All right, get that in comments, all that stuff. Talk to you soon.